Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. I'm a nurse educator here at Women's Health Network, and I want to thank you for joining us today. We're going to be having a discussion on everyone's favorite topic, libido. So joining me in the discussion today, I have some of our experts from our panel. Dr. Sharon Stills, a naturopathic physician. She's joining us from Arizona. Hi, Sharon.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you for being here. We also have Barbara Corellis, who is our sex educator and ecstasy expert. She's joining us from New York City. Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Hi, and we also have Dr. Mary James, also a naturopathic physician, and she is with us from North Carolina today. Hey, Mary.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, it's so good to see you all again, and I'm really excited that you're able to be here for this discussion. So we have some questions kind of based on a lot of the questions. We get an incredible number of questions about libido and kind of how to keep that spark alive as far as sex life is concerned. So that's kind of what these questions are based on. But I'd like to get started. Maybe Sharon, you can start us off. Why does libido change during perimenopause and menopause, and just generally during periods of hormonal shift?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons, Kate. One of the reasons when we start entering perimenopause and go through menopause is that our major sex hormones, our progesterone, our testosterone, our estrogen, are all in decline. And progesterone and testosterone are responsible for our libido, for our drive. And so when it's starting to drop off, it makes sense that our libido is going to start to drop off. Estrogen also has a lot to do with it because estrogen, when we lose estrogen, our vaginal walls can thin and become dry, and so sex can become very painful. And so it's really the dance and the interplay of the hormones, and then you can also start to think about the adrenal glands, and if you've been stressed throughout your life, they're not going to be on board as much, and so they're not going to take over the slack when the sex hormones start to decline. So it's really a hormonal situation going on, and not a pretty one always.
Right. That's what really the feedback that we get, that it's just usually kind of out of nowhere. It seems like this. I had the drive yesterday, and today I don't. What's going on? So I'm going to send this one to Barbara. But Barbara, why is maintaining a healthy interest in sex important as we move through these transitions?
You know, I kind of differ with some of the experts on this, and I don't always think it's that important, which is very kind of radical for a sex educator. But I think obviously it may affect your relationships. You know, if you're not interested in sex and your partner still is, and obviously if you're in a partnership, it's something of a concern. But I also ask the question, is it maybe time for a timeout? Is it maybe time to ask the question, do I still like doing sex the way I used to? Is it time to change it up? Do I need something new? Because at this point in our life when everything is changing, and that's not a bad thing. So while there are all sorts of health benefits, sex is exercise, it's good for the immune system, you can Google a list and everybody's got their top 10. But I also think it's important to maybe appreciate that a sex drive may diminish for a reason other than hormones, as literally a bit of a pause, so we can decide if we'd like to reinvent not only the second half of our lives, but also the second half of our sex lives.
So maybe exploring some other interests, both sexually and non-sexually, and kind
Where
of...
is your passion? And really looking at things from, you know, like how the first time our hormones changed, it was adolescence, and we went from being children to this whole other being. Well, I think we need to look at menopause and perimenopause like a second adolescence, as an opportunity to become this wildly creative new being with a new sex life. So if there's a dip, sure, I'm all for wanting to support the return of a healthy libido, but I'm not on it like it's a broken leg. I think there's too much focus on libidos being broken, my sex drive being broken, lost. There's all, as opposed to, well, where do your passions lie now? Did you think about that, or do you just intend to roll on through unconsciously? It's a major shift and deserves some major attention, and I realize that's not the popular answer.
I totally agree with what you're saying, Barbara. I've been thinking about this, and I think a lot of us, when we're younger, we have sex for maybe not the right reasons, and maybe we're not even sure why we're having sex, and we're doing it to feel good about ourselves or to get approval. And so when we go through this change, it really is an opportunity to say, who was I as a sexual being, and who do I want to be now? And so I think there is a lot of wisdom in the menopause and the hormones slowing down, because like you're saying, it gives us that opportunity to exhale and say, who was I, what was healthy about that, what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and how can I move forward as a sexual being, and what does that mean to me now? So I think that's just powerful, what you're saying.
Yeah, to acknowledge that, yeah, there is some wisdom in that. The body kind of knows what to do. Maybe if we follow that lead a little bit sometimes. That's a very interesting perspective, Barbara, and one that I had not really thought about so much. So I guess as we move through the years, it's not uncommon for there to be some physical limitations that do arise, both from the women that we hear from and for their partners, so that it can sometimes prevent intimacy, from occurring in the way that they've known it. What would you like to tell women about how to maintain intimacy with their partners when sex, in the way that they've always known it, becomes a challenge? Mary, do you have anything to say about that?
No, yes, sure. There are certainly limitations with menopause, and I think a big one is that libido does drop. There was one study of more than 3,000 women over a 10-year period who enrolled at perimenopause, and they followed them out. And they saw a decline of 50% of their libido dropped as they moved into menopause. And I agree with Barbara. Everything you said, Barbara, is great about not looking at that as a broken leg, because women, especially in this society, I think are expected to maintain the same level of drive and always be ready to go. And it does change with menopause, but that doesn't mean that we can't have a creative and satisfying and wonderful sexual relationship with our partners. Sharon, you mentioned the vaginal atrophy as estrogen really drops down, and I think that's a really big physical limitation for women. About half of women in menopause experience that. And there's vaginal lubricants, there's balancing hormones, including adrenals, which is so important, and there's even vaginal estrogens if you don't want to have the systemic effect of estrogens, and that can make a big difference. But I think that it could also be looked at as an opportunity to approach sexuality with your partner in a more creative, non-intercourse as goal-focused way. So many couples, heterosexual couples, are in the habit of having intercourse be the goal, the end all, and then the orgasm beyond that. But it has to be through intercourse, and intercourse often happens very quickly in the process. And so, if vaginal, well, it's interesting that the vagina has more estrogen receptors than any other part of the body. So when that estrogen drops, it makes a tremendous difference in those tissues. There's less lubrication, there's thinner tissues, they're friable, they break down more easily, which means that there can be significant pain with intercourse. So there are things to do to try to remedy that, but I think it's a great thing when couples can also get kind of use that as an opportunity to get creative and look for non-intercourse ways to pleasure each other and be with each other. And even erectile dysfunction, in the aging male partner, instead of rushing right to a Viagra kind of drug, use that as an opportunity to explore everything that we would normally think of as foreplay. Expand that, bring in surprise, bring in creativity and laughter and play, and have it be a whole new growth experience in a couple's sexual relationship.
I completely agree, and I have like 2 words to add to this discussion: erotic massage. I specialize
Absolutely.
in teaching erotic massage, and in my book Urban Tantra you can read about long erotic massage sessions that are incredibly juicy. And some older friends of mine, one in particular, is working on a new book called 101 Things to Do with a Soft Penis, because they can orgasm. Just because you don't need erections to orgasm, but it really does mean getting our definition of sex away from penis and vagina intercourse and into
Exactly.
something more creative. And the wealth of opportunity for intimacy in erotic massage, where one person is giving to the other in a really beautiful, slow, sensuous, sexy, sexual way, is mind-blowing. The opportunities in tantric sex are perfect for this time of life, because also we're more in a place where we can slow down and appreciate the juiciness of real intimacy, or get to rediscover it again through Tantra. And of course there's BDSM, as everybody who's read 50 Shades knows, and there's a whole lot of activities in that realm that can certainly enliven and reinvent a sex life when the old ways you were having sex just don't work as well anymore. I think of it as an invitation to the new.
Well, and I think absolutely, and I think if you look at traditional Chinese medicine and you think about your Jing, there is something to be said for not having the traditional orgasm, but for actually circulating your energy. And I think one really important thing is communication, is that the partners need to be communicating and speaking, because you'll be amazed at how many partners in long-term relationships just kind of do the dirty deed, as they might say, and they haven't even spoken about it. And it's just kind of like they're in the same manual, this is what we do and this is how we do sex. And by communicating, soft penises may get hard just from a conversation. So there's a lot to be said for the art of communication. And I think that starts with yourself first, being true to yourself and communicating to yourself what you need, and then bringing it to your partner, having them be honest with themselves, and then sharing it together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
That's all so excellent and completely encompassing, of I think what we're looking for there. I'm going to ask a question that I didn't give you the heads up on, but do you guys have any good resources for people who might be looking to start that kind of new way of thinking about their own passions, and kind of how to reinvent their sex lives a little bit? Barbara, do you have any suggestions for that?
Personally, I've got my books Urban Tantra and Ecstasy is Necessary and Luxurious Loving. All focus are packed with alternatives and enhancements for reinventing a sex life. And on my website, barbaracarellis.com, I've got a whole school of online erotic classes that people might be interested in checking out for some inspiration.
All right, cool.
Plus workshops.
I've got an idea. I wish I could direct people to my website, but I don't have one.
Oh.
But there are a couple of authors that I think are wonderful for couples together to reinvent their sexuality, their relationship. The first one is David Schnarch's, or David Schnarch, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Scharnch. Intimacy and Desire, the book. He first wrote Passionate Marriage, but after that he wrote Intimacy and Desire. And it is a wonderful way to do the communication thing that Sharon mentioned, to break out of fear of rocking the boat, of taking risks with a partner that you've grown close to and want security with. And I think as we get closer and feel more secure and more attached, it gets harder and harder to speak up about what our needs are, what our feelings are, not just in the bedroom, but any time. It gets harder to speak up. And the more we don't speak up, the more our whole energy, our whole being is suppressed. Everything kind of goes down to a lower level of energy, and energetically between the partners, that suffers. And so that book is a wonderful discussion. I mean, it's sex, or it's intimacy and desire. It's about sex, but it's really so much beyond sex. It's about learning how to be vulnerable. It's about learning how to take risks and how to well, he says intimacy is speaking the truth to your partner, and even if your partner doesn't reciprocate by sharing his or her feelings, intimacy is just sharing at a very fundamental, truthful level your own feelings. The other book that I think is wonderful, especially for long-term relationships where libido has kind of died down because it's not new anymore, and you've got that same attachment, and how do we spice it up? I just not really feeling like it. I wish I could look at my partner the same way I did in the beginning. Is Esther Perel's Mating in Captivity. Those are two wonderful resources.
Great, yeah. It's both, it's like you said, there's the sexual intimacy and all of that emotional intimacy where we kind of tend to get into ruts and make assumptions as years go on and things like that. So anything to bridge that communication gap. Those sound like great resources. So I think we kind of covered the next question a little bit as far as how to revive a struggling libido or tips for that jump start. Did anybody have anything to add to that?
Go ahead, Sharon.
I would just jump in to add to some of those other resources and to revive. I'm a really big fan of mindfulness meditation, and so I think to know thyself first is really important before you start embracing all these other things. So I think any kind of meditative mindfulness exercises that you can do around your sexuality is going to give you a great base and foundation from which to then move forward and be able to do all these other sorts of investigations into who the sexual being you want to be is. I also, for communication, I'm a big fan of imago therapy, which is Harville Hendrix, and I think that's a great way to learn how to communicate, to listen, because it's very important to listen to others as well as being heard. And I think that we all have such a, I want to be an ecstasy expert. Like, what a cool title that is. So I think having Barbara here, I myself can't wait to go to one of her classes. So I think anyone who has the opportunity to learn from her and experience some of her things in person is very lucky. And so, to jumpstart a libido, I think we haven't mentioned, and I think it's worth mentioning, it's pretty basic, but exercise is really important. And there have even been studies showing that after women work out, they feel more sexy and ready to get it on. And so moving the body, exercise helps you to feel good about yourself. Your self-image is going to be improved.
Could I add one thing before we move on?
Yes,
Sharon mentioned exercise. I would just say, related to that, obviously, is just overall health, because so many of us are less than healthy, and then we're putting demands on ourselves to have really strong, fun sex drive, and they just don't work together. I mean, if our health is bad, then our sex drive is going to be suffering. If we're really stressed, if we're racing around all day long, and who doesn't these days? We're all racing around doing different things. If we're being super moms, and doing stuff at home, and also going to a full-time job and coming home, and sex is the last thing we're doing with our partner at night, and we're wiped out by then, but we still demand that we be able to, get it all together and feel really responsive and desirous. It's really tough to do that, and so addressing our health is so key. With exercise, but also with good nutrition, getting enough sleep at night, doing the mindfulness, meditation, whatever works for a woman to take a break and relax the nervous system and be able to feel energized again. That's real important.
I would say it's also looking at the way we think about things, and sometimes we need to shift our perspective. So I would encourage women, sometimes at the end of a long supermom day, sex is a great prize, and it's like, yes, I did all this all day, but now I get to have intimate time and I have sex. And so maybe just look at your life and maybe turn the TV off or leave the dirty dishes for the morning and make sure you're making time to have sex and that you're not just running yourself ragged. We all have those to-do lists that are 1,800 miles long, and so maybe be willing to not get through so much of your to-do list and put sex on your to-do list and make some time for yourself and your partner to have some fun and treat yourself to have, an orgasm or not have an orgasm or just to cuddle or to explore, whatever it is you want to do, but make sure you make time for that. I find patients are so into their TV shows, and one of the things I prescribe so often is get a DVR and tape the damn show and get into bed and have some fun, or go to sleep, or both. So I would just recommend that as well.
May I throw in one more thing on that same question? One thing we haven't really touched on is how self-esteem can change, self-image can change when women go into menopause, because there's changes in weight distribution, there's sagging of skin, there's sagging of breasts, and our society tells us that we can't grow old, or if we are going to grow old, then at least don't look it. So there's a lot of pressures on women, and self-esteem can really suffer at that time. And I think a great exercise for women to do is like first thing in the morning, out of the shower when we're naked and standing in front of the mirror, just practice admiring our bodies, practice falling in love with the changing us. Just learn to love it and check those. Notice the negative thoughts, the self-criticisms that come up, and with growing awareness, they can be stopped sooner and replaced with the positive, because it's we're not going to get younger as we get older, obviously, and so if we don't really start improving that relationship with ourselves and how we look at our physical selves, how we see ourselves as attractive as we get older, it's only going to get tougher. This is the time to start, and it can make a tremendous difference with sex drive, because if we feel attractive, then we feel womanly, we feel desirable, and we want that connection. We want to flaunt it.
That's so great, Mary. I'm so glad you said that, and I'm laughing because I do that in the morning, and this morning I was looking at my butt, and I thought, if I could just take like a half inch off here, I think it'd be so much better. And then I thought to myself, you're ridiculous. Like, who's not going to love you? If someone's not going to love you because your butt sticks out a little too much, or you're not going to love yourself because your butt sticks out a little too much, like, get over it. And so I loved my butt, all extra inch of it. But it's really important that we remember that.
I love that.
All right.
Yeah. no, that self-image piece, I mean, all of this, the libido is obviously such a complicated issue, but that self-image piece, I think it's funny, we were just talking about this before we started recording, that we just look at ourselves under a much harsher lens than anybody else does. I'm sure any partner wouldn't mind that extra inch of butt or any of that, it's just a matter of kind of changing our perceptions, our perspective a little bit, in all those different areas. So, like I said, obviously it's a more complicated issue than just physical, but once we've kind of started the exercising and started working on the mental, emotional piece, what other ways can we help to support a healthy libido, either are there supplements or foods or things we should be adding in or trying to avoid specifically? What do you recommend typically to your patients and clients? Anybody can start. Sharon?
I'll start. Well, I think that you can start with herbs, and I know at Women's Health we have herbal equilibrium, and you can use maca and ashwagandha, and there are other supporting the adrenal glands, rhodiola, damiana, shatavari is a nice Ayurvedic herb. So there's a lot of different things you can do. In my office, I use a lot of bioidentical hormones for women, like estriol cream, and certain vaginally is usually a home run out of the park for women who are having painful intercourse due to the atrophy of the vaginal walls. I think, again, reducing your alcohol intake, reducing coffee, getting enough sleep, all of those things. There are foods we know like dark chocolate and oysters and figs, and I mean those are fun to eat, and getting zinc can be really important. So I think it's overall, I haven't really seen like, oh, eat oysters and your libido is just going to skyrocket out of the wall. I think eating a healthy, balanced diet for you is what's important. I think to increase the libido, the eating of the dark chocolate, the dark chocolate increases circulation, and so it's good in that respect. But I think eating dark chocolate can just be made into a sexy thing that could just turn you on with your partner, maybe melt it and smear it all over your bodies or something. So I think that, like Barbara was saying, you can get lists of why these foods are good for libido, and I think they're fun to look at, but clinically, I haven't really seen like, oh, if you eat these, you're going to become super libido woman. So that would be what I have to say. It's just going back to your general balance your hormones, maybe get some acupuncture, sleep, eat right, exercise, and do all the things you need to do to take care of yourself.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you just said, Sharon. It's so tempting to go for the quick fix and look for the libido boosting herbs, and I think that they can have an effect, but only as kind of icing on the cake on top of doing all those basic things that you just outlined so well. I think I agree also that balancing hormones is really important, especially in perimenopause when those hormones are just all over the place and just producing symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats and trouble sleeping, extra fatigue sometimes, mood swings, and that can just make us feel lousy and not want sex. So balancing the hormones are important anyway, but they can make a big difference with sex. The androgens, meaning the male sex hormones like testosterone and DHEA, from the studies that I've read, it seems like the decline in those with menopause have the biggest effect on sex drive. Estrogen not so much directly affecting sex drive, but interestingly, studies looking at replacing testosterone in women are kind of all over the place and don't really strongly support that they dramatically boost libido. And so in the ones where there is some observation of that, who knows how much of that is placebo, because a woman is kind of in a different headspace as she's taking it. So that's kind of an interesting twist. But I think the adrenals, are often depleted by the time we reach menopause, and working to strengthen the adrenals with adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha and the Siberian ginseng, and there's so many good ones out there. Those are great to take as one of the ways, on top of stress reduction and all that, to get adrenals back in balance. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, just as kind of a gentle warning, is that oral estrogen therapy can reduce the amount of bioavailable testosterone in the body. So we know that testosterone has a big effect on sex drive, and women who will go on oral estrogen, and I'm emphasizing oral because the transdermal through the skin estrogen doesn't have the same effect, but most women are on oral estrogens who are on hormone replacement, and their testosterone that's available to their body suddenly plummets, and that can really contribute to their sex drive going downhill. Oral birth control pills do the same thing. So if a woman is on hormone replacement, the ideal, in my opinion, would be to switch to bioidentical if she's not already on bioidentical hormones, and to consider using them in a transdermal form, because it's not going to have that effect on her male sex hormones, on her testosterone. Or maybe she even needs to have a little bit of testosterone thrown in there too to compensate.
Okay. Yeah, and that's, I mean, all excellent suggestions. We do try to reiterate for the women that we speak with that, they call us or shoot us an email and say, I'm stuck. I can't get my libido, back up. Can't get that fire lit again. And we do try to emphasize that you got to address whatever's going on underneath there hormonally. You can't isolate that one symptom as far as needing correction. So, okay, so that's the questions that we had for today. I thank you all so much for coming and joining in this discussion. Certainly, we could go on for hours about talking about libido. There's so much to say, but I encourage you, first of all, ladies, our experts, thank you so much for being here. But everyone else, we encourage you to stop back soon and see what other hangouts we've got coming up on our YouTube channel and on our Google+. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. It was fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.